Everybody ready? Cool. So today we're going to go over creating a settings menu in-game in Unity. So we will set up the settings menu to actually change the resolution, full screen, toggle, quality settings, volume, and possibly more depending upon how far we get. And most importantly, we can now, with this, get rid of the annoying little pop-up before you get to Unity games when you rebuild.
I like them.
Yeah. So that will be gone. So before we get started, it's creating a settings menu in Unity is generally more of a polishing step when it comes to game jams. You generally don't want to do it as like the first thing you do. It'll be more of a last thing that will make it feel more like a game. And then I'm also trying to structure this a little bit differently. So what I'll be doing for this workshop is I'll be following the steps in Unity on screen. And either you'll be following along or trying to get creative with this. And then once I finish a step, I'll put some of the general steps, like notes I took for the workshop, on screen in case anybody missed some steps and doesn't want to like fully ask or whatever. But ask anyway, though. Yeah. So ask questions if you want to. And let's start. Oh, that's right, I just minimize. So we'll be working in 2D today with Unity. Open up Unity, create a new project. Call it whatever you like, and create the project. And you want to make sure you'll have the asset package also downloaded from Stu.org if you don't already. Because that'll be the first thing I do is I have it downloaded already, so I'm just going to drag it in and import all of it. It'll just take a minute. Cool. So let's open up the pre-made scenes, if I can find them. Scenes, there we go. So we have our main scene, just the main menu basically. We have our settings menu, that I fleshed out just a tad already, just so we don't spend all of our time trying to get the layout correct, because horizontal and vertical layouts in Unity aren't very nice to work with. But feel free to go ahead and mess with that. And then we have our main game, which you'll see in a second how it's just very basic. Jump, bounce on any enemies' heads to kill them, stuff like that. So the first thing we want to do, just because it's a package that you imported, is you want to go up to File, Build Settings, and just drag all of these into the build. And you want to make sure that main is first, and I think that's just the most important thing.
Yeah, I think the rest don't matter as long as
yeah. Alright. Everybody good? Hold on. Cool. So the first thing, the next thing we'll be doing is we'll be jumping into, so setting up our settings menu. First off, create a empty game object. Name it something along the lines of settings. GS menu. and you'll want a component on it, or a script on it of the same similar name or whatever. Open that up in Visual Studio. So the first thing that we'll be working with, actually setting up with the pre-made window already, is hooking up the, if I can get this to unfreeze, hooking up the volume slider right here, so that we actually get dynamic volume when we drag that slider. So if you jump back into Visual Studio, I don't believe you need start or update, so delete those. You'll want to create a public void, call it something like set volume or something, and this will have a parameter of type float called volume. And for now, we'll just debug.log the volume. So something very, very simple to start off with here. We'll jump back into Unity and
Did everybody get that?
yep.
Using
Yeah, that's probably right. Was it not Control Plus?
hold control, just scroll down.
Ah,
Yeah, so the reason we're not using update or start.
yeah. So this isn't going to run every frame. We might need to put start back in, depending upon how far we get and what we do with it. But it'll become kind of clear why we're not using those in a second. So like when we go back into Unity and jump over to the canvas, canvas settings, and then I have them named by rows. So we'll jump into row 4, which has the slider component on it. Go over into the inspector and find the on value changed. So what this does, if you click add to list, it will, every time the slider is changed, the value of the slider is changed, it will send out a signal, a dispatch to the to anything that you tell it to. So what we'll drag into this spot right here is the settings menu, which has the settings menu script on it. So if we go into the function that we want to call when the value changes, we can see that there is set volume right here, which we could use this one. However, what would be better is if we used the dynamic float set volume. What that just means is that it'll automatically pass in the parameter to the system. Cool. All right, and then I believe we'll just play from here, and you'll see that when we drag this slider, it doesn't show all of the output, but if we scroll all the way down, we'll see we'll get values ranging from 0 to 1 without really any extra work, which is nice. So the next step that we'll be doing, if everyone's still caught up, is just changing the min and max value of the slider. So Unity in general has its audio system, its range varies from -80 to 0, which is a little weird, but it just is the range that they use to actually handle their audio. So we'll also go from -80 to 0, so we don't have to do any separate coding for this. And so if you run it again, you'll see that now we get output from -80 to 0, which is good. So we'll jump back into Visual Studio, and now we want to hook up the actually we won't back not in Visual Studio yet. We want to create an audio mixer to actually funnel the output through, and we'll need to change something else that I kind of forgot to beforehand, but it shouldn't be too hard to change. So go up to Window and open up the Audio Mixer tab, and just throw it somewhere that is not horrible. You're going to want to create a new audio mixer and just call it whatever you want to. I'll call mine Master, I guess. So now we have this audio mixer that ranges, you can see, from 0 to -80 decibels. Or to 20, sorry. But 0 to -80 will work just fine for us. So now what we want to do is, oh yes, we want to, so we want to be able to access this from our script. So we need to, what it's called, exposing a parameter. So if you go over here to the volume in the inspector and right click on it, you can select expose volume of master to script. Click on that, and then we can go up here into expose parameters in the auto mixer panel, and we'll see that we have a new exposed parameter that we should be able to rename. Yes. So we want to call this something like volume, because it directly associates with the volume of the audio mixer. So everybody good? So did you get to exposing? Yep, okay. Go up to expose parameters and right click rename.
This is on which object?
So just in the audio mixer panel, go to expose, yeah. So then you're exposing or you're renaming the exposed parameter of the volume in the audio mixer, so that we can access it through a script and set it dynamically. Yes, okay. So then if we go back into Visual Studio now, we'll need to have another using tag up top, using Unity engine dot audio. So that gives us access to a bunch of audio stuff, like a audio mixer. So we have a public audio mixer. Let's just call it AM. And then we're able to, instead of debugging.logging this, we can go am.set float. And the float we want to set is the volume that we just exposed a minute ago. So make sure that this spelling is exactly the same, because if it isn't, then it won't actually change anything or tell you that it's wrong. And then we want to set that float with the volume parameter that we're taking in from the slider. So -80 to 0. Cool. So now if I had done this correctly the first time when I actually put up the package, it would have been basically that was it. However, we also need to, the audio system that I changed a little bit. Let me pull up the file. I wanted to make sure I did this right. So if you go into scripts and open up the audio manager script, and what we want to do with that is we want to create an audio mixer group inside. Audio mixer group. I don't know, group. And the audio mixer group is just like the master audio mixer group. It's actually an audio mixer group that we created there. So what we're doing here is, and you can walk through this code a little bit more later. We're basically just we have a bunch of sound objects, and this is just a convenience script so that we can call .play on them easier. So we can go s.source output audio mixer group is equal to s dot output. Wait. AM, yes. Because that's our, yeah. I'm brain dead for a second. Group, actually, for me. Cool. So with that done, we can now go back into Unity, find the audio mixer, or audio manager, which I believe is in main. Yeah, right here. And you'll see that you have a new audio mixer group. Just drag master. No, not master. Just select the little icon over here to pick. I find it hard to actually drag anything in there, so now I believe that should be good. We should be able to play audio and adjust it dynamically through there. So if we play from main, yeah. Oh. Looks like I forgot to sign something. Oh. Where was that at? Settings menu. Back in settings. So just do the same thing over here. And restart from main every time because I have the audio controller being created in main. So you'll find that it has a really short range, but it does work. Let me see if I can get the... It's not outputting up there. So, if you can further play around with that and get it how you like to, maybe make it exponential instead of linear, and get a little bit better for that. Feel for that. Does anyone have any questions? I can put the steps up on the board again. Alright, if we're good, then I'll move on to the next thing. Graphics. So, this controller here will be setting our resolution, or not our resolution, our quality settings. So if you want to go into Edit, Project Settings, and Quality, you'll see that we have a bunch of quality settings over here that change the way your game like looks. So ultra is obviously the best setting, whereas very low renders faster, but it doesn't look as good. And then you'll want to change that based upon like where you're playing it. So like if you build to WebGL, say, WebGL will be slower, so you want to render it on lower quality settings. So what we're going to do is delete a couple of these at first. We don't need this many settings for the user to choose. Too many choices makes user confused generally. So we want to have low, medium, and high. And once again, you can play around with these settings. These are probably okay for what we have now. Just know the names of these settings. So then from there, we want to jump into at the canvas and settings. So we want to access this drop down right here. So that is in row 2 and drop down. Cool. So we want to provide low, medium, and high options for the user to choose. Right now I believe it's set to high, so you want to put that as the first option that when it starts up, so we don't have to worry about getting the value and setting it back in the drop down menu. So I'll put high, medium, and low. And you'll see that changed the settings menu right away. So now we have those 3 settings in the drop-down menu. Cool. And keep in mind that in order to do this correctly, your number of settings here must match the number of settings in the quality of the Unity inspector. So what we'll do next is jump back into Visual Studio again, and we'll create another function, public void set quality, and I believe, yeah, we're taking in an integer. This is where it comes in where you have to have the same number. So an int quality num, qnum. So here we want to just access, it makes it really simple how Unity does it. Quality settings dot set quality level. Oops. Come on. And we would just want to set it to qnum.
Then you probably need your things in the project settings to be in the same order.
Yes. I probably forgot to mention that, but yes. Same number of them in the same order. So if you save that and go back here, we can also debug. Well, we probably won't need to. We should be able to see the difference, hopefully. Maybe maximize this on play. So if we have it at high and bump it down to low, it should get a little bit more fuzzy. And we should actually be able to see this in the, if we go back to Edit, Project Settings, Quality, not maximize on play. Ooh, am I on? I don't think I actually had these ordered correctly. Yeah, so order them correctly and then make sure you're on the one you want to start with. So when I change it, it's not changing.
This changes when you have to build it. Does it have to do with plugging in the app there?
I didn't think so, but maybe. Changes made in play mode will not be saved. Quality. Oh, duh. The drop down. We have to add a on value change. So we didn't actually tell it to do anything once we've changed the value. So just do the same thing you did before with the slider. Throw in the settings menu to this object here, and go to settings menu, and same thing as before, the dynamic int set quality. And now, if we do that, quality, there we go. And we'll see the quality changing dynamically in the game. So no more one setting of quality. You can actually access it in the game. Actually, I never actually played the game yet. Let me do that. So I'll go into settings. I can see that this is in the way, but I can change the quality, change the volume, go back, and play. So, very simple right now, but it's modular enough to add if you want to add anything to it. So, now that we have both the volume and graphics handled, we'll go on to full screen toggling, which will add yet another function in settings menu, public void set full screen. Cool. And same song and dance as before, except for this time you have a boolean is full. Sure. And you want to, in here, once again, relatively easy, screen dot full screen equals is full screen. One-liner. Nice and simple when you're in the last bits of the game jam and trying to get it make it look pretty. Add functionality. So we won't be able to demo this until we build it, because you can't full screen and window mode the editor. But once we build it, you can see that actually it'll switch between those two modes. Everybody good still? Yeah? Okay. So next is resolution. Changing the resolution size of your window. So like 1920 by 1080 or what is it? 800 by 600 or whatever resolutions your screen supports. So getting those dynamically and letting the user actually choose from a drop down of those. So once again, we'll jump into, how should I do this? Jump into the code first. So first off, we want the start back, because we want to get the different resolutions that the specific screen on the user's laptop, desktop supports. So we want to bring the void start back. And you can either have it private or not. I don't like it private just because I always see it void start, but they're automatically set to private if you don't specify. So this will be run at run when this is created. So what we want to do is first off, we want to, I believe, using Unity engine dot UI, and in the start we want to and actually while we're at it too, create a public dropdown So this will just reference the dropdown that we're trying to assign values to. So in the start, we will create resolutions, or resolution, which is just a object that holds screen resolutions and stuff like that. So I'll name it Wait, I have this weird. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so we'll need a resolution array called res or something like that, and we'll just get the screen's resolutions. So that'll give us all of the resolutions that are available on this current system. And just because, to be thorough with it, just in case you set options in there already, just to display before you actually get the resolutions, we'll also call dropdown dot clear options. Cool. So next, you might want to be tempted to just do resolution. No, just dropdown. Sorry, I renamed these differently. Dropdowns or dropdown dot add options res. However, that doesn't work. The options of a dropdown have to be strings. So we'll need to manually go through and make these resolutions into strings. So let us create a list to hold these string objects called options, and set it equal to a new list of string. And then you need it because it's a method. Alright, so we have a list for that, and now we want to iterate through the resolutions, get a suitable string out of them, and then add that to the options list, and then add the options to the resolution. So like we can actually just add options there right now, and then we'll have to format it. But so for int I is equal to 0, I is less than resolutions, or res dot length, and I++. Basic for loop. So we want to get an option out of this, so string option is equal to, so we want to get in the format of maybe like width x height, and display that on the resolutions drop down. So how we'll do that is go res dot width, right? No, res at the index I dot width plus a string literal plus res at I dot height. So that'll get us a string in the format we want to, a singular one. And then with that, we want to go options dot add this one option. And yeah. So now that should let us display the options in the settings. Right? I don't think I ever changed this. We have to go into settings menu and specify the drop down that we want to actually place these things on. So mine is in row 1 drop down. So just drag that on in there. And I believe that's all we had to do for that. Yeah. So now we have a nice list of not quite wide enough drop down. Fix that by going in here and just making the width wider, even though that messed up the layout a little bit, but that's fine. So now we have all of the possible resolutions. But you'll also see that our current resolution is not the resolution, my default resolution on my machine. So we'll need to fix that by checking through all of the resolutions as we get them to see if they are the same as my screen's resolution, and then setting the value of the drop down to that one. So how we'll do that is before the for loop, we'll make a int res index or something like that. Set it equal to 0. And then while we're checking all of the resolutions, we want to go if basically the resolution that we're at is equal to my current resolution, then set the res index. So if res at I, and there's no compare method for resolutions, so we'll have to evaluate them by width and by height separately. So dot width is equal to screen dot width, and res at I dot height is equal to screen dot height. These are integers.
I mean just for comparing the resolutions.
No, unless in the new Unity updates, there is no dot equals for resolutions as of 5 or something, and I just haven't checked the 2017 versions, but I don't think so. Be nice, but it's not too many more steps this way. So then we want to set res index equal to I, and this will only get set once. So then at the end here, after we add the options, we want to go into drop down dot value, which is just the current value located at whatever index it is equal to res index, and drop down dot refresh. So refresh zone value just to update the drop down, because it won't update automatically apparently. But so if we go back in again, nope. Yeah, it is recording. Okay. Run it again, and we'll see that it is different. That might just be because I'm in the editor. My default is 1080 or 1920 by 1080, I think. But once again, once we build and run this, it should be evident, which we can do now if we want to, because The next thing up would be, yeah, we can build and run now and see how it looks. Yeah. So I'll make a new folder here. Builds v0.1.0. Name whatever you want to. Wait for it to chug along. How's everybody's day going? Same. Midterms over for everybody?
Yep.
Good stuff. I still got one, kind of. Kind of sucks. So this still shows up. We can remove this later. That's weird. So we have our game showing up. Audio is not playing. That might be because of the HDMI, I'm not sure. I wonder why. Anyway, we can set the full screen. Is that working? Oh, same thing as before. I keep goofing on the same thing. So I'm just going to end this one. Setting the on value change is important. So row 1, toggle on value changed. You'll want to drag in the settings menu again and set full screen. And row 1, drop down, on value changed, settings menu, set quality of dynamic int. So now if we build and run.
Set quality or set resolution?
Yes. Good catch. Row 1, drop down, oh yes, we didn't actually make the set resolution function. So we'll also need to make a public void, because we're just displaying those to the drop down. Now we need to actually set the set the resolution in the actual game. So set res. That's good enough for me. Don't feel like spelling today. So we'll set it at the index, and it is screen.set resolution. For that we need a resolution, so we'll create resolution res is equal to our resolutions. Actually, res at, right, did I name this res? We need to access this outside of the start function, so just copy it up here and delete this. So now we'll be able to access our resolution array that we originally got down here. So res at index, and then just plug in the resolution. Right? Oh, it also needs a boolean for full screen. Nope, it also needs resolution dot. You need to set them separately. Width, height, and then it needs a full screen, which we can just get from our screen dot full screen will return us the value of the current full screen. So it will keep it the same. So now should be all okay. Everybody doing okay?
Can you attach it?
Attached. Yeah. Yep. I believe so. Cool. So we have our resolutions, and if we change it to something other, it is not changing. Full screen is changing though. What did I miss? You know, you're right. I didn't change it. Old habits die hard, maybe. Once again, set up the drop down. It's because I came in here before and I set it to set quality. You want to set res. Now, cool. And so some of this is like it's not full screen right now. That's just because I changed the value on the actual the pop-up before we actually got it. So it changed it to something other than its default. So once we get rid of that, it should actually do it correctly. So now, if we change this to another resolution, let's be crazy and change it to this one. We get a really close window, which looks weird, but it's correct. Yeah. So this is our game right now, and we can't change it back. But yeah, so just be careful which one you change it to. Yeah. So now, I wasn't sure how far I was going to get. Would you guys like to continue on with more stuff or no? Yeah? Okay. So I'll ask the question, which stuff? So I think, where we're at. So we have full screen, resolution, which was a little bit of work, but got it in. Oh, yes. Before we actually move further, I'll show you where the in project settings in player, we can actually now, since we have everything else set up that it does in before you start the game, we can actually change the display resolution dialog to disabled. And boom, we got our goal accomplished of removing this, because it's annoying. So yeah, I was going to ask what you guys wanted to do next. I had a couple ideas. More. Changing the difficulty. So we have an enemy in the current game right now. We can change their view radius, whether they chase after the player, their speed, stuff like that. And that'll be a good example of like actually changing something that you define in your game. Or otherwise, we can go on to other things that I hadn't planned out yet, but I'd feel fine to wing it. Feel interesting to wing it. I saw that we said like multiple settings windows in the top. So like toggling between those, so you can have more settings, because more settings are always better. Changing your field of view, so that's just changing the camera's scope, field of view, basically. Yeah. So what do you guys want to do? If you guys want to do anything more. Not a lot of people here, so. Difficulty? Okay. Alright, so I'm not going to try to make it any prettier right now. Because once again the horizontal and vertical layout panels are a little difficult to deal with. But let's just add another row here. So I just did Control D on this one just to give me another one. And the vertical layout panel is kind of nice, where it does like actually put it in a separate place and aligns it for you if you get the settings right. So let's just name this R6 and remove the button under there, and instead let's just see if we can duplicate one of these drop downs up here. Duplicate that one and drag it into R6. Hide that. There we go. So we'll want different settings on this. So say we want easy mode, medium mode, hard mode, something like that. Do you guys have any preference for setting names? No? Alright. So easy. Boring. Baby. So baby. We're going to shame them for playing on baby mode. I think Mark Brown had a video on that recently. Was that Mark Brown? I don't remember. And then killer. Sweet. So by default they're playing on baby mode. What we will do is, before we do anything else, we have to make a new function in here. How did I do this? Oh, another interesting thing with this is that we can use enums, enumerations, to actually set this. So what we're going to want to do is open up a script from before. I believe it was Game Manager I had this on. Call this to start. Add drop down. Maybe? No. It isn't. It's still on the settings menu, I think. So, yeah. We'll have a public void called update, enemy difficulty, because just in case we want to update the enemy difficulty while playing the game, if we want to cheat like that, this will allow that. And what we want to do, we'll actually leave that like that for now. We'll fill it in a second. First we want to instart call update enemy difficulty, so that when you create your enemies, right? Am I thinking about this right? Is this in? No, this is on enemy. Sorry, guys. I was right before. We want to open up the enemy script. That's where this should live. Place this somewhere. Same thing. And this is just for updating the difficulty here. It's like when we create the enemy, we want to immediately update their difficulty based upon the Game Manager settings. So here in Game Manager, we want to in Game Manager, we also want a function that this will be the one where we actually change the game mode based upon the drop-down value. So it will be called something along the lines of public void set game mode. And in here we will do, so currently I have, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but the singleton pattern that only allows for one of this kind of script living on a game object to exist in a scene. So like if I go back over here, if this will let me compile, does it actually have errors? No, it doesn't. Cool. So if I actually go into main, I can demonstrate this for you guys. Now it's playing the audio. Why is it playing the audio now? And we can look over in the inspector and see that it has the regular components and then the don't destroy unload components, which just contains the auto manager and game manager. What that means is like when I transition to another scene, it'll keep those around. You can look into that more another time, but more or less it is just having this line and this awake thing. Which means, kind of along the lines of, you can access this in a manner that's reminiscent of static. So you can call the class and then get the instance of it, instead of actually creating an instance and then calling something on it. If you don't know what that means, then like don't worry about it. But so what we can do here in the set game mode, we can call, if you want to do the full thing, it would be game manager dot instance, because our instance variable is up here, so we can either include or exclude the game manager. It doesn't really matter. Dot game mode, and I have a enum up here, or a difficulty called game mode that is this enum. So I should probably display this a little bit easier. So we have a public enum which just contains values. This one is, so it's indexed 0 to however many values you have in here, but you can access them. You can say difficulty.easy, difficulty.medium, difficulty.hard, because I have difficulty right there. And then to view it in the inspector, you create a public difficulty and game mode. So I just set it equal to difficulty.easy here originally. And that actually we have to change. So we rename that to baby. Boring and killer. Start them out at baby, and we set the game mode to an int mode. So what's nice about enums is you can just set that to mode after you do a cast. So you have the integer mode and you cast it to a difficulty words, and it just works like that. So if you have mode being 0, it corresponds to baby mode. Mode being 1, it corresponds to boring and then killer. So cool. And we might want to also throw in a debug.log here of the game mode plus the new game mode. So that'll be wrapping up the code for Game Manager, and we also need to change the code in Enemy a little bit to implement what we didn't have implemented before. So update enemy difficulty. So in update enemy difficulty, we want to basically retrieve the difficulty value from Game Manager, and depending upon that value, set the enemy traits. So like their view radius and speed. Those are the only traits that I have for them right now. But we can set those dynamically based upon the game mode. So what we want to do here is... Am I missing? I am missing one right there. Do a switch statement, which will just take in the... so we can access the game manager .instance like we did before, .game mode. And once again, it's really nice. We can just cast it to an int, so we don't have to worry about making the enum into a separate class so we can access it. So then we can switch based upon that. So case 0, which this corresponds to baby, return. Case 1, which corresponds to, what was it again? Boring. Which is what I hope I'm not being right now. And then case 2, which corresponds to killer mode. Cool. And so now in here we want to, before we, oh no, this is break. Sorry, not return. Although it would have worked the same way. In here we want to set the view radius of this enemy to some value. I believe for what I had named easy mode was 5, and speed to 2. Copy that over to these two. For boring mode, it would be around about 8 and 4. And for killer mode here, it would be, the values I found were 10 and 6. Cool. So I believe that should work, if I remember this time to actually assign the drop down correctly. So same thing as before. Go on the drop down. On value changed, we want to, and now what is it? On value changed, we want to actually. It wasn't in settings, was it? No, game manager, set game mode. So we can go actually drag the prefab into here. Sorry. Okay, I don't know what that was. Make sure you use the one with the box on it and not the gear. Set game mode, dynamic int. So now if we run it, I remembered to do it that time, so it should. Started from, oh, yes, because I didn't have a game manager yet. And that's the kind of problem with singletons. You have to create them in the outermost screen that you'll be starting in if you need them before then, and then start from there every time. So it gets a little annoying, but also it's nice to be able to access data in them without actually having to create a new one. So I'm going to settings, I go and change to game mode killer, and we should be able to see that reflected over here in the game mode. Change to boring, see that in boring. Go back, we play. So the enemy is a little bit faster, and has this cute little jump that I couldn't bring myself to get rid of, even though I can kill him. Yeah. Cool stuff. Continue, don't continue. I'm fine doing either. But it will be all new stuff to me too now.
You have no opinion.
You happy? Cool. Alright. Well, thank you guys for coming out. I hope it wasn't as boring as it might have seemed. As it might have sounded in the title. Add a settings menu to your Game Jam game next time. It'll make it nice and pretty, nice and useful.